When you're overwhelmed by separation and divorce, it's tempting to just not do anything. But not doing anything can actually come at a massive cost, emotionally, financially, and legally. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the hidden consequences of waiting too long to sort out your property and parenting plans. We're going to unpack what's really at stake when you leave things adrift or leave them in limbo. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, Laura. Hello.
Now, this is something that I was guilty of. I was massively avoidant. And I know we've done episodes on people who are divorcing someone who's avoidant, but today we're going to focus on those people who maybe listen to this podcast but aren't actually doing anything to kind of show them some of the reasons why maybe they need to start thinking about moving on.
That's right. And it's not really to shame anybody because sometimes it's just so very hard as to get on. And so we're not doing that. We just want to let you consider what the consequences are, I guess, if you leave it too long.
So the other issue is we're definitely not here to talk you into getting a divorce. If you can reconcile with your partner and it's safe to do so, of course, that's what we would love you to do.
Yep.
But if you've been listening to these podcasts for a while now and just still feel completely overwhelmed and don't know where to start, they're the people we're speaking to. We don't want to convince anyone to get a divorce.
No.
Unless they want to. So let's get into, Mum, first of all, just the non-legal part of it. It's the emotional toll of the uncertainty and indecision and just not knowing what's what in your future.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
So let's get into, Mum, first of all, just the non-legal part of it. It's the emotional toll of the uncertainty and indecision and just not knowing what's what in your future.
Yeah, I think we've both been there, but it's that you open your eyes in the morning, you put your feet on the floor, and in addition to thinking about what you've got to do for the day, in the back, at least in my mind, was, oh my God. I haven't started it. I don't know what to do. I've got to get out of this. It's a lot on top of already busy lives, I reckon.
Well, in my situation, it was one of my children was about to start high school and I didn't know where we were going to live. I didn't know whether we could go to the high school. Like there was a lot of uncertainty around all of that. And my response was to stick my head in the sand. So there's a lot of emotional uncertainty and for the children as well, Mum.
Yeah.
If you don't lock in parenting plans, the kids are just at everybody else's mercy and they don't have a locked in idea of where they're going, when they're going.
Yep. And I do remember a lady, I thought she handled her children beautifully. They were very young. And she was able to, after we got consent orders for her, she printed out a calendar for the fridge every month with ladybirds on the days they were going to the other parent. And kids thrive on routine. So it is better for them rather than ad hoc.
Yeah. There's so many emotional uncertainty issues with that. There's also, I think some people don't do anything because they maybe hope that they're going to get back together or they're just waiting to see what their ex will do. Like there are those elements, Mum. Have you seen them come to you later with any issues?
Through my career, I've had people come a couple of times. They come once for their no strings attached appointment. And then I don't hear from them for a year or so. And I think, oh, good, maybe they've got back together. And then they come back and say, no, I've evolved from that. People ask me as a lawyer, when should I leave my husband? That's most of what I get. The men aren't that indecisive, really. But the answer is you go when you can't stay anymore. And everyone who has actually separated, I think, listening to the podcast here, will have had that moment where they can't stay anymore. And that's when you go. And so if you go back and try again, I think you do have to keep trying until you are absolutely convinced it's over. And then you'll be able to put one foot in front of the other. And when you do that, you'll feel so much better. Of the messages we get, Laura, it's mostly people feel so relieved to have that weight off their shoulders because they took the steps to get themselves out of the mess.
Yeah, that's so true. So emotional aside, that's obviously horrific for those people in this limbo.
Yeah.
The next is the financial consequences of delaying property settlement and
Yes.
children's to a degree, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what are the financial consequences in the legal world of just letting it slide?
Well, number one, I think, is that your legal fees will be higher. The longer it is since separation that the court has to look at, or your lawyer has to look at documentation, the more expensive it is, because people get on with their lives and there may be new businesses started or new houses built, and it just makes it tricky. And there was a case of Woodland and Todd where the court tried to apply the law as it was at the time of the separation. The trial judge did. But the full court said, no, it's at the date that we make the decision. That's the date we look at the property pool. So if you've got a tricky ex who is perhaps doing something dodgy with her business or his business, then you're really giving them extra time to get there. And I think if you're not ready to really roll forward, when you get a little bit of pushback from the other side, like I'm not giving you those documents, if you've used all your emotional energy to ask once, you might not have enough energy to ask again. You just sort of let it hang and go, oh, well, they won't give me those documents. It's tricky.
But there are things. So if people are listening and they've been in that situation, they've already asked their ex. Their ex has said, get stuffed, I'm not giving you any disclosure or whatever.
I can't believe you just said that.
But if they have said that, there are ways and there are things you can do.
Yeah.
But you've got to go find out what they are. You can't just go, oh, well, I tried once, and just go and sit down and hope everything gets better somehow.
Yeah.
So this was a little bit of hard talk, but also it is a little bit of a reality check,
Yeah.
So yes, you're avoiding pain and drama and worry by dealing with this, but you're exchanging it for pain and worry and drama in another way. And that is through that financial consequences and the emotional uncertainty for the kids and for yourself.
And you've got to go through it anyway. It doesn't just magically dissolve. At some point, you need to face it. So, that's the thing. And you have to say perhaps no to your ex for something. It's hard.
Yes. But I have heard you say it's like exercising a muscle, learning to say no to your ex or learning to stand up if it's safe to your ex to get this kind of stuff sorted. Slowly over time, that muscle gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So whilst it might feel the biggest deal in the world to do it the first time, the third, the 30th, the 50th time, you're going to be an absolute pro at this sort of stuff.
I'm impressed that you listen to me, Laura.
I do sometimes, Mum, funnily enough.
But you're not only exercising your no muscle, right? You're also helping your ex to exercise their outrage muscle when you say no to them. If you've got someone on the other side and you're not saying no to them, ask yourself, is that because I'm kind? Is that because I'm overwhelmed or guilty? Or is that because I'm scared of what that person might do?
Mm-hmm. And if that is the case, please call 1-800-RESPECT and see if people can explore that with you a little bit. Or you can go and listen to our episode 4 things you might not realize are coercive control. That may actually open your eyes a little bit to the situation. And we do have so many people say, hey, I've been listening to your podcast. I've slowly realized that I'm in this situation. So talking to other people, making a step, making a move, reading, educating yourself, it may help you pull out of it because you realize what situation you may be in. Now, Mum, another thing we hear a lot is people go, well, we're pretty amicable. They're not in a controlling situation. Why can't we just have a verbal agreement? I heard somebody say, oh, yeah, my wife and I, we just sat down and wrote out our agreement of what we want to do with property. I printed it out. We both signed it and we've gone on our merry ways. Why can verbal agreements they're doing that so they can avoid all the legal stuff. They're just like, let's avoid it all. Let's not get lawyers involved. Let's not do any of that. But what's wrong in the law's eyes of just having your own written piece of paper agreement or a verbal agreement for that matter?
Yes. So those things, a verbal and a little handwritten or little typed up piece of paper, however you do it, if it isn't formally through the court, it means your property settlement hasn't happened as far as the court's concerned. And so it leaves the gate open for further down the track for one or other of you to go back to court and say, oh, we did an informal interim property settlement, but now I want my proper property settlement because I didn't get enough at the time, and this is what I've got today, and look what they've got today, and I want to have my property settlement. So that's what that person who said we just sat down and wrote it out, I think that's just the best thing, right? But they stopped one step too short. Then each of them should have taken a copy of that document to a lawyer, got it checked to see if it was reasonably fair. And if you're giving up stuff in a negotiation, you need to know how much you're giving up. Don't say, oh, okay, I won't look at your super, I won't do it, without knowing exactly what that is, because you may kick yourself later on. Yeah.
They should have signed, and then the lawyer should have checked it, and then they should have filed it in the court to make it official.
That's right. And it goes into the court as a consent order with an application for consent order. The registrar looks at it, reads it through. They have to check to make sure it's just and equitable. In other words, fair and reasonable. And if they're satisfied with that, then they will put their stamp on it. And then you have a sealed consent order. But if you don't do that last step, if you don't put it into the court, then there's no oversight for a start to see whether it is fair. And it may come up to bite you in years to come. I'm remembering that case of Farmer and Bramley that we had. So that's a big problem to not.
Can you just explain the case of Farmer and Bramley?
That was a case where a couple had been married for quite some time. I think they had 4 kids. The husband, by all accounts, wasn't particularly helpful, and he was, I understand, had some medical issues and drug taking. So mum did all the work pretty well. And when they busted up, they had nothing, right? They were in a rental property, they had nothing. And everyone in those days, the lawyers included, used to say, look, if there's nothing to divide, don't bother dividing it. But he won the lotto, $5 million, about 18 months after separation. And her lawyer, who I think is a saint, thought, you know what, that can't be right. That can't be right. This woman's made contributions for the children all along the marriage and all post-separation, and she doesn't get a share of this windfall, because there was a feeling that you had to have contributed to it, put money in for the ticket or whatever it is to be entitled to any of it. And so she got $795,000. The court did that. He first said it was his mum's ticket, which the court didn't believe. And then she got $795,000, which back, I think it was 2012, was a really big amount.
But if they'd done a property settlement that just said, you keep whatever you've got and you keep whatever you've got, even if there's hardly anything or nothing at all, and they'd signed that and put it in the court, if he won his $5 million, he would have probably been able to have kept it.
Definitely would have been able to keep it. So I'm prepared to stick my neck out there because it's post-separation. So the court likes to draw a red line under your finances, you know, so that this is the old and now we're off to the new.
Another lady, she came to us much later. They'd done that. They'd got the joint account. They'd divided the money exactly in half. I think they both had a car each, and I think they both had a house each. So they said, you have that house and we'll just leave it like that. They wrote it down on a piece of paper, and then, yes, he came back trying to get it a year later for property settlement because he'd sold the house, spent all the money, sold his car, and he ended up trying to get half of what she had because they didn't have official property orders.
That's exactly right. That's the risk. And also another reason for having your orders sealed in the court, that's what we call it when the registrar puts the stamp on, having stamped sealed court orders, is that under Section 90 of the Family Law Act, you don't pay stamp duty if you're transferring a property between yourselves pursuant, that's the word, to a family court order. So pursuant means you have to do your document first and have it sealed, or binding financial agreement and have that finalised before you can apply Section 90. So before you transfer any of the houses, otherwise you're going to be paying stamp duty in the state level, and sometimes that's thousands and thousands of dollars. So because the Commonwealth government can order the lower realms of government, the states, to do or not do things. And under Section 90, Commonwealth government said you can't get stamp duty if they're transferring it pursuant to a court order.
To a divorce property settlement.
Yeah, that's sealed. So it has to be sealed. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's some horrific reasons as to why, even if you've got nothing, you can do a little property consent order up that says each people keep their own thing. The other thing, Mum, and we've touched on it a little bit, but procrastinating getting a parenting plan or parenting consent orders can affect obviously your parenting stability, your ability to parent, but also your court credibility. So can you explain to me, if you just let your parenting slide for a bit and then all of a sudden one parent goes, no, I think I want 50-50 with the kids. So maybe one of them's gone off having a bit of a midlife crisis there, gallivanting, and then they start to settle down. You've been looking after kids nonstop for a year or two, and the parents just been dropping in every now and then to see the kids. But then 2-3 years later, they go, I want 50-50.
Yes.
So not having anything locked in, you're basically starting from the start, right?
In a way, look, the history counts, but you need to have documented it, and it can be a bit of a scrabble to go back. I just want to make it clear that the changes to the law that are coming through in June this year, there will be no presumption of 50-50 shared care or no presumption of shared parental responsibility. That's been waived, and so it's the best interests of the children. Now, the court may say, he's redeemed himself, these kids need to spend time with their father, and they might make it like going to a contact centre maybe to start with, or meeting in a park, or whatever those steps are. And they might be the steps that you think are in the best interests of the children. But so often the person on the other side is all about their own rights and they want the 50-50. So you're going to have to argue that in court,
And you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to do lots of paperwork and lots of proof. But if that parent going on their gallivanting after separation, leaving you with the kids, if you'd maybe said, hey, are you okay if I'm just in charge of looking after the kids and making the decisions, sent them a parenting plan, or just did up some consent orders, they can't really come back and say, I want 50-50 now. It's harder, isn't it?
It is. It's harder. It's very much harder because you've already established that they agreed early on to this arrangement. I mean, by gallivanting, as you call it, around, I guess they've shown the court their priorities, but the court won't let the kids suffer. So the court may well make the orders exactly as you think they should be, like gently reintroduction and then gradually build up. But you're going, like you said, you're going to have to fight for it. So if you had consent orders, these are the words. Here's some words to put in an order where one person is like, I'm off to Norway, I won't be back, or I'm going to America for 6 months for work. And these words that you could put in your order are that the children spend time with whatever the other parent is, mother or father, at all such times as agreed between the parties. Full stop. Now, that means that the person who's leaving or who is being like pretty well delinquent, I guess, in looking after their kids, they can come back and you can let them drop in and drop out, and you're controlling that process, because if they want it and you don't agree, nothing happens. And if you are a person who understands the best interests of the children, then you wouldn't want absolutely no time. You would probably want to lead it up before they go into some sort of regular arrangement. And it gives you that control.
You have to go back to court.
Well, you can't. So I was talking to someone about this the other day. It's long been the court's policy under Rice and Asplund, that case way back in 1979, that kids' best interests are served by not going back to court about the kids over and over again. So everyone gets pretty well one property thing, and that's done, as we were talking about it. But with kids, the best interests of the children is paramount. So things crop up. If you split when the kids are 3 or 4 and then they come up to 15 and 16, there's things that can change. But it has to be things that you can't foresee, okay? Otherwise, the court won't let you go back to court. So if you've got one court order, then that really shuts the door. So if you were able to get an agreement about once every 6 months, or phone and video, or all such times as agreed between the parties, and the other person signs it, then if you get it sealed in the court, there's got to be something really dramatic for them to be able to change that look, to go back to court, right, to get a different order. And if they say, oh, the change is I've come back to Australia, the court says, well, you knew that was possibly going to happen. It has to be something that wasn't foreseeable at the time. So you might have to break that down for me, Laura, because I'm sure I've confused everybody.
No. So basically you're saying that once you have a consent order for parenting or a court order for parenting, the courts say, don't come back and have another go at it because it's not fair on the children. But the only time they can go back and have another go at it is if something major has changed, something unforeseeable, major difference has changed, and there needs to be new orders made. But if it's just because you've changed your mind or because you've changed your location, less likely to be a reason they're going to let you back in the door. So in that saying, if you are someone whose ex has disappeared or someone whose ex is just doing whatever they want for you and for your stability and for your children's stability, it's better to have a plan locked in or a consent order locked in that does say that clause, or go and see a lawyer, of course. But then at least you know you've got an order. They can't just at some point turn up and go back to court again, because having that hanging over your head wouldn't be a great.
You know it. Every time something goes wrong in your family life, you think, oh, is this going to be the trigger that the other person brings the other person down on me? So yeah, you're right. It is very nerve-wracking. And a parenting plan doesn't save you. A parenting plan is unenforceable, and it is not a barrier to coming back to court.
If you're separated or about to be and you need to get everything finalised and sorted but you don't know what to do next, or you're looking for a way to do your own divorce and settlement without spending thousands of dollars on lawyer, then you already know what you need to do, and that is to sign up and become a member of the DIY Divorce Blueprint. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and the tools you need to get divorced or de facto separated and finally settle. Work through this course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared or overwhelmed of all the family law legal jargon and processes. Let us walk with you through this journey and show you a better way.
So, Mum, I know some people, they say, I'm just waiting for the right moment. I'm waiting for the right time. And if you've got a manipulative and controlling, and you're sitting there waiting for the right moment and the right time, what are they risking by waiting for the right time?
Yeah. Look, I know people that can't leave sometimes until they have to leave. And apart from the obvious one of that you don't know what your future holds and how many years you've got or how long you've got to waste all of this time. And there was an article in the paper today and someone said she waited 20 years to leave. And this is what she wants people to know. And 20 years out of your life, it's a big chunk. Yeah. But some people just can't. They just feel they can't.
It's not just that, though. The risk is also, I see it so often. I see people write in and they say, I wanted to start the steps, but I'm afraid that my ex, it'll rock the boat. It will upset my ex. I don't want to upset my ex. Everything's running smoothly. I'm living in the house that he's paying the mortgage for. I don't want to upset my ex. And I just feel like and I think I said to this lady, at some point, you are going to upset your ex, because unless you want to accept exactly what they offer you when you finally do try and do property order, you're going to upset your ex. So if they're that kind of person, unless you're just going to agree to absolutely everything they say the whole way through property settlement or parenting, you're going to have to start exercising that muscle of upsetting your ex.
It's your
future. Yeah, it's your future. You're going to have to upset them eventually. If you're holding and waiting, your ex probably knows that you're afraid to upset them. Yeah. And then who knows how many horror stories have we heard where the ex is trying to shuffle the money around, hide it, and
doesn't
all that
pay
kind
the
of
rent
stuff.
or hasn't paid the mortgage when you thought they were.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, saying no, fear of saying no to that person is a classic symptom of being that bird in a gilded cage. And I'm going to go off track here a bit, but I always think of this Paul Hogan. He's saying, if I give my heart to you, then his funny line was, then I'll have none and you'll have two. And that's what I feel like. If you live directly according to how your ex has set you up, they're living your life and their life. You're not living your life. You've got none and they've got two. And that sort of needs to lift you up, I think, out of it. It's probably that coercive controlling person, there's probably good reason to be scared to say no.
Yeah.
So you might need to put some things in place first for safety.
Now, on the flip side to that, I've seen another situation a couple of gentlemen have been in, and a lovely member as well, where they're living at their office. They're paying all this money. They're paying for the mortgage of their big fancy house. They're paying for everything. They've got their kids. They don't want to upset the kids' way of life. They don't want to be seen doing the wrong thing. They don't want to do the wrong thing. So they get stuck in this situation where they're just living in their office. This poor fellow was just...
It's a sleeping bag.
For like 6 months.
Yeah.
And not wanting to upset what their life is currently like.
Yeah.
And I think a big message to anyone listening today is, I remember sitting in the mediation going, what offer can I accept that will mean my life will be exactly the same and the kid's life will be exactly the same as it was while I was together with my ex-partner? And it's only now looking back as that I realized your life can't be this. No, it won't be the same. But you know what? It'll be it'll be amazing and even better than you imagined. But I know you can't see it right now. But I did realize one of the brain mistakes I was making, my thought patterns, was what agreement can I get so that my life is the same and the kids' lives are the same as they were when we were together. And that's just not going to happen because, like I said, Mum, it is a cake. You are going to divvy it up. But don't worry, you can make more cake.
You're right, but there's one thing you can accept and agree to have your life exactly as it was before, and that is to go back.
Yeah.
And you've made that step and now plow through. But you're right, Rosie, I always talk about the cake. You can't cut a cake up and still have a whole cake, but you can have a better cake.
You can have a completely different flavour cake. But for those men that get stuck in that situation where they desperately just want to do the right thing, they don't even know what they can do because if they change anything at all, the world is different. So
and they might not see
what
the
happens.
kids.
What are the consequences of that?
Yeah, but it's sad because sometimes I think these people, the men, are often in a situation where if they say no to anything the ex-partner suggests, they won't be able to see the kids, no? And also the good men that we know, they're raised, if they've been the family breadwinner and providing for the family, that's very ingrained in them, and they are a protector of the family. So the last thing they want to do, if they're a good person, is to do anything to ruin that for the family. So it's hard, isn't it, to go from a relationship to being forensic about what you're going to do and divide things up as dispassionately as if you had a bag of apples, you know.
But you can be causing yourself issues with children. If you're sleeping in the office and you're not seeing the kids and you do that for a year, then like, Mum, you talk about the courts, look at the status quo. So we always say start as you need to go on with the children.
Yes.
Because if you're not looking after them, if you're not spending time with them, the courts aren't going to think about that as seriously as they would if you were.
Yes. And it's awful because sometimes the reason is a really good reason. And same with some women who might not think the kids are safe with their ex, but if they send the children with their ex just to keep the peace, it sends a really bad message for the court if they find that something's been going on and they go, but you sent them. You can't now come around and say, but actually they're not safe there.
And that takes us to the next scenario, those scenarios where sadly the men aren't doing the right thing and there have been issues with family violence. And if you feel triggered, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline, or if you are experiencing this, 1-800-RESPECT. But there are situations where it's the mother or the father that they have been violent or the children are unsafe around that other parent. So instead of doing anything about it, they just keep the kids or they just keep sending the kids. But like you said, Mum, it would be better for them to go and get consent orders or parenting plans set in place that's set out so that the kids are safe.
Yeah.
And if they don't do that, like you said, if they keep just doing whatever they were doing before, the courts may look back and go, well, why are you saying that they're unsafe when you've been sending them?
I would love the courts to wake up to the effect of coercive control trauma on a person, and that might make them continue to send the children even though they know that there's a risk because their fear or their prism that they look through is so warped after years and years of being with this person. But the court doesn't have, they don't have really a lot of insight into emotional abuse. They're being trained now. It's in the legislation, but it's not easy for them to say, oh, but I could see why that happened. And yes, I'll believe them now. What they're more inclined to say, because they don't want to get appealed, is past behaviour is a good indicator of future behaviour. What you did in the past that is contrary to your orders means the orders you seek, I think one judge likes to use the word disingenuous. They're not fair dinkum. You're just trying to control the other person, keep the kids with you, get more property. I've never seen a judge go, but of course that person's been a victim of coercive control over many years, and we can understand why they did that, and we should look at their behaviour in the prism of that. Because if you're in a family violence, coercive control relationship, you'll see a glimmer of it. Sometimes that will be what makes you leave. And then your family and friends will go, well, da-da-da, and you might start to see it a bit clearer. But the longer it is that you're away from the person, the clearer the absolute unacceptable nature of their interactions with you becomes. And you're dealing with normal people in the real world, and you can look back and go, really?
Right.
I can't believe I did
dealing
that.
Yeah, I was dealing with that, and I put up with it. Yeah.
As darling Maggie Tabra said, she said, after a while, she thought, well, excuse me. She's very polite, but yes. And probably if you've been married a long time, and a particularly intensive time, if you've been having babies and buying a house and all of that, it's probably crept up on you while you were busy. And you think, oh, thank God someone else is doing the banking, thank goodness. And then gradually go, hang on a minute. Yeah.
So for people who worried about the child's safety, getting this stuff sorted sooner rather than later is better, because unfortunately, like Mum said, the judges aren't particularly trauma-informed. There are special ones that are through the Evans list, but you've got to start as you need to go on, and you've got to start telling the story as soon as possible. And we're not saying you have to go to court for all this stuff. If you can get your ex to agree to a parenting plan or a consent order, that's going to save you thousands of going through lawyers, thousands of going through the courts, and then you are sorted. So, Mum, I think today's episode was really just to talk about the risk of delaying, and the risk of letting it go. Yeah. And I don't know if any of you are aware, but we've got our DIY divorce blueprint open at the moment. It is literally designed to help you create your own property and parenting consent orders or your own parenting plan, so that you can use minimum use of lawyers, but get it sorted. And a lot of people might go, oh, but particularly people who are going to listen to this episode who are really not sure where to start and they're completely overwhelmed. The whole process is designed because I was in that space. I was completely overwhelmed. And so we've created it with baby steps and a step-by-step approach to say, okay, do this, come back, do this, come back. Yeah. And it's literally pulled thousands of people out of that overwhelmed mud and shown them the path and gotten them sorted. And I do think that if you are one of those people listening today who are dragging your feet and you haven't done anything about it, that this will be good for you if you want to do our course, because it is one way of taking those steps forward. You don't even have to go see a lawyer yet. Like, just go and listen to some of the episodes and get your way out. Whether you're separated under one roof, whether you've already left, it shows you a way out.
It does. And also, I mean, you may have been in a low-key way trying to talk to, you actually might be having coffee with them, trying to work something out, and it hasn't worked. You can go from there to being firmer with letters and mediation. There can be a mediation. So it's not going to be same old, same old. We show you how to move it forward if you've been stuck. And if you're listening to this podcast, my dears, I suspect you are ready to take some steps if you haven't already.
You just don't know what the steps are. So we're throwing you a ladder, because I wish someone had thrown me a ladder to start with so I could get my ducks in a row and figure out what the heck you're supposed to do next. So if you're interested, please go look at our website, thedivorcecourse.com.au/enroll. and you can enroll today. We've only got enrollments open until the 12th of June, which is closing next week. We like to take our members through. You can, like we said, you can learn at your own pace and you've got unlimited access to it. But we like to make sure that everybody's sorted, settled, and figuring things out before we open the doors again to let new people in. So you've got a window of 1 week. So It would be great if you are interested to go and just have a little look. I'll put a link in the show notes for you. course.com.au/enroll.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Mum, for your time today. Again, if anyone's felt triggered by this, please call 1-800-RESPECT or 13 11 14 for Lifeline. And we will be back next week with more meaty episodes.
Bye, darling. Bye, everyone. Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lim would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording